Hello, Scott here, and welcome to A Poll from the Shelf, Dragon Warriors Part 2. In the previous episode, we covered chapters 1 through 5, kind of getting a general idea of this, what looks to be so far a fantastic game and a great alternative if you're looking for something different to play, but still maintain within a general fantasy setting. If you're looking to break away from the quote-unquote most popular role-playing game in the world and just looking for something a little bit different. So let's just continue where we left off. So we are at Chapter 6, In the Beginning. The purpose of this chapter is to give each player character a background. So we went through the general specifics of character creation. We went through the general details of your options that you get to choose from. But now there seems to be a bit of a little bit more in depth as far as the background of your character is concerned. Not necessarily, in the terms of the stereotype within 5e, where we're looking to make a 5-page background, but just to kind of give you a little bit of foundation here. So, a provenance upon which the player can build his life history from birth to the time he enters the campaign as a young blood of first rank. So this is kind of similar to, if you're familiar with RuneQuest, or I've been looking at RuneQuest. RuneQuest has this optional take of creating your history, your family history, and kind of give your player character a little bit more depth, as opposed to just, hey, I'm a level 1 whatever. And looks like this one tries to do the same. So carrying on, tables below will supply a history for any newly rolled character. Okay, so there's tables to help you out here. Often the player character will like to concoct his own life history. The game master will certainly allow and encourage this if the player's ideas are, 1, interesting. Yeah, there's no defaulting that. Certain game masters, have the decision to decide if the character you make, fits within his idea of what he's trying to do within his game. So I don't begrudge any game master who conducts that with a bit of open-mindedness, so to speak. So, and do not conflict with the needs and style of the GM's campaign. Well, there you go. I don't need to take a sidebar on this. I'll just let the book explain itself. But sometimes players take the chance to be extravagantly optimistic. Okay, I've worked out my whole life story. I'm heir to the kingdom of Algendy. Yeah. And other times, even the most inspired player will find his imagination flagging, I guess. Okay. Then it is time to let the dice lead the way. Yep, fair enough. Refer to the tables below and see what result you get. Okay, so we kind of skip over a little bit, a little interlude here. So social class. Many of the societies of the Land of Legend are feudal, with a complex system of mutual obligations and status structure that it entails. It will help if the players have some idea of the relative status of the various classes. Bear in mind that status is not entirely fixed. There is some degree of social mobility, not much in the orderly region known as Chobret, but in Algendy and Northern Albion, levies may be knighted in the same battle that deprives a lord of all his estates. Modifiers such as wealth and prestige, especially high office in the church, also make a great deal of difference. So this is definitely taking a more, I guess, for lack of a better term, realistic approach, to a medieval setting. This isn't high fantasy. I mean, obviously there's a lot of fantasy involved. There's magic and whatnot, but it's still trying to keep it somewhat grounded in a relatively realistic medieval society, which is fine. I mean, some people like that, some people don't. I for one enjoy settings that does have a little bit more of a little bit more of a personality and a little bit more of a history, trying to establish itself and make it more immersive. So, and if it's feudal, a feudal medieval society, great. If it's a high fantasy society where it's essentially just today with with swords and shields, whatever floats your boat. All right, so we'll kind of skip over a little bit because I don't need to go into the details of what a medieval feudal society is, but we have things such as nobility and gentry, craftsmen, learned professionals, tradesmen, menials, and so on. Then we'll kind of skip over to here, determining your background. So a player uses the following tables once he has generated a new first-rank character, which we technically would have done by now. Players with already established characters could also use these rules, but it is usually unsatisfactory to suddenly discover a character's life history when he or she has been in the campaign for some time. Fair enough. Give your GM a break. Don't make him have to deal with these sudden dynamic out of the blue. Oh, by the way, did I forget to tell you that? All right, so looking at the background tables, we have, looks like it's a D100 roll, and we have adventuring profession, so it's done by profession. And depending on what you roll, you can be anywhere from nobility all the way up to other or GM's choice. But it kind of goes down the list: gentry, townsfolk, a variety of different townsfolk, merchants, entertainers, freemen, serfs, Kotars, I don't know what those are. I'd have to look that up. Slaves, charcoal burner, Timorian, cataphract, Marajan assassin, clan of harbingers, Karoth magi. All right, I should have my glasses on. Anyways, so, and I assume that, the roles are different depending on your profession, because, knights have a better chance of being nobility than an assassin. And I would imagine it depends as you go down the list. Obviously, there's certain ones that don't qualify for it. A knight is not going to be part of the Karoth Magi. And likewise, an assassin, let's see here. Likewise, a sorcerer wouldn't be a Marija assassin. So, all right. And then we have subtables. Fantastic. So, things such as craftsman. So, armor, weaponsmith, artist. So these are tables that, if you've played any sort of RPGs, as far as fantasies are concerned, you're going to see, somewhat similar aspects in there as far as, creating a general background. Some of these seem to be more in depth, but they pertain to the world that it takes place in of legend. So, barbarian origins. So these are going to deal with the different tribes, I would imagine. It looks like. Yep. Background suitable for professionals, freemen, and so on. So it does give you a good, good amount of tools to make something that would be a comfortable fit if you're playing within, this particular world that's provided with the book. Dealing with nationality and native tongue, the player has now determined their social niche into which his character was born. Barbarians using this, elementalists using that. Will know their country of origin. For others, this will probably not be specified. A knight who is the son of a cataphract knows he comes from the New Celestine Empire, but the son of a millersmith, blacksmith, and so on, or whatever might have been born in any country. This is left for the player to decide. Okay. So languages and other languages, what you may or may not be fluent in. Literacy in ancient languages. This is always a bit of a discussion when you're dealing with certain role-playing games. That take place in a medieval type setting. Literacy, the ability to read and write, is acquired through a formal education. Though this often means a church or monastic education, the character may have been taught by his parents or relative. In addition to knowledge of classic script, formal education is also likely to give the character one or more ancient languages. Sorcerers and warlocks are always literate. So there we go. So there's your chances here. Hey, let's face it, in traditional medieval society, not a lot of people were literate. So, you can, and once again, these are aesthetic choices, this is a role-playing game, use the rules that you want and, modify or don't use the rules you don't like. All right. So there we go. So that's kind of a couple pages of dealing with the background. So chapter 7, into adventure. Adventuring strategy. An adventure almost always begins with the GM briefing the players on the most basic level, something like, you're in a village on the edge of Gloaming Moor, and the innkeeper tells you that a murderous ogre frequents the area. The villagers will pay 40 silvers if you find his lair and put an end to him. So yeah. So this is going to give you some, a general strategy, a foundation, so to speak, of starting your adventures with your player characters. Not necessarily just GM advice, but also PC advice. NPC adventures. If you think your party is not powerful enough to handle an adventure, the GM may well drop some heavy hints, hopefully, Hirelings work for cash. So, yes, we do have the option of hirelings within this game, similar to a lot of the older versions of, Dungeons and Dragons and other games. A lot of OSR games, provide those options. Illumination. What to do? Why do all player characters have a lantern as part of their initial equipment? The reason for this is that many of the adventures will take place in underworlds. Yep. Okay, so a description on lanterns and the necessity of light. Dealing with encounters in the underworld, since the light of their lanterns will penetrate some 15 meters in the darkness, this distance at which characters can expect to encounter most monsters. NPC adventurers will have lanterns of their own and will be sighted at something up to 30 meters. Okay, dealing with surprise. An encounter may contain the element of surprise. A monster group of monsters will surprise the player characters on a roll of a 1 in 6. Excellent. Rules for fighting in the dark. And then carrying on with rules of battle order. So yeah, so this is giving you a lot of things that may be missing from certain role-playing games. I mean, granted, some people may consider it long-winded, because they are experienced in role-playing games. But, I don't begrudge games giving at least a decent example of how to deal with some of these things that some people think come naturally in role-playing games, or more often than not, are kind of hand-waved and overlooked. Personally speaking, I feel that things such as that, when you just kind of hand-wave them, for the most part, you lose some of the immersion of the game and, and the possibilities. And also you're cheapening the aspects of your players and their abilities. All right, out of sight, stealth and perception, how the scores are used. And then we carry on with various modifiers depending on the armor and perception. When a stealth roll is made, such things such as tracking and climbing, falling, special cases. Okay, so what are the special cases with these aspects? Dragon Warriors is a game of fantasy reality, distinct from real reality. Combat and magic take up the bulk of the rules because they are the main elements in any fantasy adventure, but this is a role-playing game, and characters are supposed to be able to try anything they might attempt in reality. How do you game master a situation that the rules do not specifically cover? The first step is to consider what the character is doing and decide which of his 5 characteristics are the most bearing on the situation. Thank you. Some games don't do that, so you just kind of gotta, figure it out on the fly. So having ruled what characteristic is being used, you will assign a difficulty factor, fair enough, and a number from 3 to 18. If less, he must roll a 1d20 and score under his characteristic to succeed. There we go. Extra special cases. Inevitably, there's going to be some cases that won't fit any role, even the all-purpose rule given above. The player characters are tiptoeing past the sleeping orc sentry. What's the chance he'll wake up? There's no characteristic or ability that can really apply here. You just have to assign a percentage roll and roll the dice. So, kind of like a luck roll. It does seem arbitrary or even unfair. It shouldn't be. The reason why FRP games have to have a game master is so that there's someone to adjudicate the chance of something like that. Yes. Trust in your game master. Excuse me. So, all right, what do we have here? All right, we have a little kind of like a comic book page. Exploring a hill fort with his comrades, Sir Balin moves toward an ancient statue, falls into a pit trap. He grasps desperately from the edge of the pit. The GM decides this needs above average reflexes. Difficulty factor 13. The same as his score. Not a problem. Balin tries to pull himself up. Difficulty factor 11 or average, but Balin's strength is only 7. He has to roll a 6 or less. He fails. Balin's fall is broken by icy water. Can he draw breath before his armor drags him to the bottom? Difficulty factor 13, and his fast reflexes save him again. The GM rules that he can hold his breath for as many combat rounds as his strength points. Luckily, Balin's friends are close, and a weighted rope drops beside him, and he is hauled to safety. Now, I really like this. This is a really neat way to give an example of a game and likewise illustrate it. This is a very nice touch. Really like this. Okay. Chapter 6, the rules of combat. Okay, the rules of combat are the most fundamental element in any FRP game. Very true. A large portion of any adventure is likely to be taken up with battles against monsters and hostile non-player characters. Make sure your players understand the basic combat procedure before starting the first adventure. so on and so forth. In its simplest form, combat consists of two characters fighting one another. For game purposes, every fight is divided into combat rounds. Combat round represents 6 seconds of game time. The procedure of each round is the same for both characters involved in the fight. The one with the highest reflexes get the first blow. Okay. So we're dealing with the actual aspect of combat, which was touched upon briefly prior to this in the summary. We have the armor bypass roll. Having scored a hit, a character rolls to see if his blow can penetrate his opponent's armor. So you hit, and then you see if you penetrate the armor, which is cool. The attacker must roll higher than his opponent's armor factor in order to penetrate it. The type of die used for his armor bypass roll depends on the weapon with which the blow was struck. Apology for that ding. I don't know what is up on my computer right now, but oh well. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. Let's see here. Weapons vary in their effectiveness in 2 ways: their ability to penetrate armor and the damage they inflict for a successful hit. All right, so moving in combat and strength. A character with a strength score of 16, 17, or 18 adds a +1 to his armor bypass roll into the damage he inflicts. Fair enough. Shields. A character using a shield rolls 1d6 for any blow that is struck against him. On a roll of 1, he catches the blow on his shield. The blow is negated, even if it was a critical hit. Very cool. Let's see here. Wounds and recovery. Missile combat. And then we start to go into examples of weapons with illustrations, I might add, which is excellent. We have here another example of combat using this comic book format, which, like I said, chef's kiss. Very nice touch. Combat penalties for wearing armors, which we once again touched on in the previous summary. The combat round, different things you can do within the round. Evading an attack. Okay. So certain fast movement attacks or other threats cannot be prevented by using defense, but must just be dodged by the use of evasion. Evasion is used in a wide variety of situations: to leap through a closing gap, to sidestep a dragon's breath of fire, to dodge a falling chandelier. In any situation where the character's survival depends on getting out of the way. The attack of the character is the character is trying to dodge is given a speed rating. This might be anything from 5 for something slow to 20 for lancing energy beam of a magic ring of red ruin. The character's evasion is subtracted from the attack speed. If a roll of 2d10 comes up less than or equal to the attack has hit. If greater, the character dodged. Okay, so yeah, so we're already dealing with different types of die rolls: d6, d10s, d20s. So if you get this game, make sure you have a variety of dice, which is fairly given in regards to RPGs. I kind of feel like that's moot. Unless you're brand new to it. All right, so, and then typical attack speeds with examples. Okay, fantastic. So yeah, I mean, not overly complicated. There's not pages and pages and pages of rules. You roll to hit, you roll to see if that hit penetrates, and you have a variety of different scenarios that can cause it to either connect or not. How to deal with wounds, missile combat, an example of the rounds, and there you go. You're out the door. Seems fairly quick. The 2 steps in the combat, I know a lot of people don't like. There's plenty of games that utilize that, and there's plenty of games that go even more in depth when it comes to, just general combat. But not overly convoluted, and depending, like with any games, once you become familiar with it, it gets quicker, or usually does. All right, the use of magic. Although there are 4 different spell using professions in this book, or 8 if you count the different types of elementalists, magic is not common in the land of legend, and most people still live in fear for those who wield its occult power. So, duly noted. For sorcerers, warlocks, and elementalists, casting a spell involves speaking an incantation aloud. Ooh, and sometimes the louder the better. With gestures and movements, wands pointed at the target, and even symbols marked on walls, floor, or bodies. This kind of thing can make nervous guards get twitchy or even panic a crowd of yokels. There are no set rules for this. It's the GM's call. Fair enough. So spells are divided into levels of increasing power with complexity, and a sorcerer, elementalist, or warlock cannot cast a spell of higher level than her rank. Spell costs magic points. Okay, so it's a magic point system. 1 magic point for a first level spell, 2 for a second level spell, and let me guess, yes, up to 10 for a 10th level spell. When they cast a spell, they deduct the appropriate number of magic points from her magic point score. When the score reaches 0, the character can cast no more spells that day. A sorcerer's magic point score increases with rank, of course, as shown in the table. So first, you have 4 magic points, all the way up to 10th level when you have 35, and plus 4 magic points per rank thereafter. Expending magic points regenerate at precisely midnight. This happens automatically. There's no need for... Whoa. Oh, we are going to take a pause there. I just had an earthquake. Okay, I'm back. The house is in one piece. Nothing, no, it really wasn't a large earthquake. It was just kind of like a jolt of sorts. I live in Southern California, and earthquakes are part of life. And when they occur, it's just like, a wind blowing. It was a gentle breeze. So nothing to be concerned about. But anyways, carrying on. Where was I? So yeah, resetting at midnight. That's kind of cool. And of course, immediately, our power gamers are already thinking, well, shit, I'm going to use up all my magic points at 11:59, and they automatically come back at midnight. So yeah, we're going to have a lot of people who are going to be gaming into the wee hours of their setting as opposed to daytime, taking advantage of that rule. Anyways, like the other spellcasting classes, a mystic cannot use spells of higher level in his rank. However, mystics suffer additional difficulties when using magic. That's right, from the summary. Whenever a mystic casts a spell, he must make a check to see whether the effort physically fatigues him. To avoid psychic changes, or psychically, I should say. To avoid psychic fatigue, the mystic must roll equal to or less than, 13 plus his rank, minus the spell level on a d20. Okay. All right, so that's, not complicated, but that's one that you're going to want to write down. or if there's a GM screen notating that, because that's no one's going to remember that off the bat unless they've been playing the game for some time. The roll is called the psychic fatigue check. If that fails, the mystic cannot cast any more spells that day. Mystics automatically recover from psychic fatigue at dawn. Note that when making the psychic fatigue check, a roll of 20 always results in fatigue, whatever the mystic's rank or the level of the spell being cast. Well, I hope the mystic does get something special, though, to kind of, as far as the spells are concerned, to kind of balance out that effect, because otherwise, why would you want to be a mystic? Casting spells above their level, thought you can't do that. For the purpose of penetrating the sorcerer's defenses, wall of magic, and spell screen, mystic spells are considered to have a magic point strength. Oh, okay, there we go. Equal to their level. Thus, even though mystics do not use magic points, an enthrall spell being of level 4 is equivalent in strength to a 4-point magic spell such as Curse. The other 3 wizardly professions can put extra magic points into a spell to help punch it up. Okay, so mystics cannot do that, though, but they can choose to cast a spell above its normal level. All right, so there's a trade-off. This increases the chance of psychic fatigue, but gives a more powerful spell. Great. Terminating a spell. A mystic can cancel out his own durational spells at any time. Unlike a sorcerer, the mystic does not need to take a combat round to do this. He can cause any or all of his duration spells to lapse just by not bothering to sustain them. All right, so those are the trade-offs. Excuse me. It is hot and humid today, and we have the air running, so it's very dry in the house, and I'm just... it seems to be allergy season here too. So we're just a mess. Earthquakes, 110 weather, allergies, dry air. Why am I even doing this? Okay, carrying on. Elementalists, casting spells. Elementalists have a separate point score in each of their elemental categories. Magic points within one category cannot be used to cast spells for another category. So fire magic points cannot be used for earth spells, for instance. Okay. The number of magic points that an elementalist will have in each category is shown below. All right. When an elementalist has used up all the magic points set aside for an element, the category is depleted. The elementalist cannot use spells of a depleted category until he performs a ritual of recovery. The ritual must be... What? All right, we're busy here. That was my wife shouting at my son, greeting him good morning. So, yeah, let's see if we can get through this without any more interruptions, but I highly doubt it. It's Saturday here, so, who knows what else is going to happen. All right. Carrying on. So, yeah, back to Elementalist. So, a ritual of recovery. The ritual must be performed at a special time of day in which the element is ascendant. Okay. The appropriate times are fire at sunrise, air at noon, water at moonrise, earth at moonset, and darkness at sunset. These cannot be performed on the one night each. These cannot be performed on the one night each month when there is no moon. Oh, okay. Interesting. We got a little bit of a Dragonlance vibe here in regards to the moons conducting the the abilities and the strength of your spells. Somewhat. I mean, it's a little bit different, but the moon, and the sun kind of has a little extra flair when you're an elementalist. That's kind of cool. All right, finally, warlocks. A warlock's magic operates like a sorcerer's, though the spells are different. The warlock can cast spells whose level does not exceed his rank, and in doing so, he expends magic points equal to the spell's level. Okay, a warlock has lower reserves of magical energy than a sorcerer of the same rank, however. Any expended magic point are replenished at sunset. A warlock's magic points are exactly equivalent to the sorcery magic points except where stated. An elementalist sorcerer or warlock may choose to put additional magic points into a spell, as mentioned. And how does the spell affect its victim? Every attack spell falls into two categories: direct attack or indirect attack. All right. Resisting direct spells, so there is magical defense, as noted earlier. Any spell which may have a direct supernatural effect on the character must overcome its magical defense. The spell works with the magical attack of its caster, for which the target character's magic defense is subtracted. The result is the number under the caster must roll equal to or under 2d10 in order for the spell to work. All right. As before, a 2 means the spell takes effect regardless. Similarly, a 20 always indicates the spell has failed. And there we go. We have another graphic illustration of how the spell works. Love it. How far can a spell reach? How long does a spell last? Yeah, we're kind of going to, maybe just jump through some of these. Can spells be overlapped? Terminating a spell. And there we go. All right. So, yeah, like combat, you get a little bit of flair, a little bit of differences, plus or minuses, depending on the type of, spellcaster you want to be within the game. Not overly complicated. It's essentially just, roll under someone's magical defense and boom, your spell works with the possibility of, critical success and critical failure. All right. The meat of a lot of fantasy role-playing game books, the Book of Spells. So we've got Sorcerer spells, and I'm sure they continue on through here. So yeah, I may just kind of flip through a couple of these just to see what's interesting. But there's, this is something that if this game is something that you think you want to enjoy, you take your time going through the different variety of spells here. So let's just take a look at maybe what you would get at first level. So what is Dragon Breath? It's the first one here. The range is 20 meters. The spell creates a narrow jet of flame which can be directed at a single target. If the target fails to dodge the flame, match the spell speed of 12 against the target's match the spell speed of 12 against the target's evasion. He takes 1d6 plus 6 health points damage. The damage roll is reduced by the target's armor faction. Okay, so armor plays into that. However, a character in plate armor would only lose 1d6 plus 1 hit points. Interesting. All right, so carrying on. All right, so there's 10 levels of spells, if I'm not mistaken. So, all right, let's take a look at what one of the most powerful spells do. What's a hecatomb? Is it hecka awesome? The spell is applied to all beings, whether friend or foe, within 10 meters of the caster. Okay, it is instant death for any on whom it takes effect. Wow. Match caster's magical attack versus victim's magical defense. So potent an attack, it is not without its cost, though. The spell causes a severe magical backlash to the caster, represented by the loss of 1 to 100 experience points. It is a price few sorcerers would be prepared to pay, except in the most extreme circumstances. So, yeah, Powerful spells have their toll and their cost. Mystic spells. I'm just gonna take a look at the more powerful ones. So mystic spells only go up to level 9. Only have a couple here. So Phoenix. Let's see. The spell allows a mystic to return from the dead. He, or more accurately, his spirit self, must cast it the combat round after he is slain. Okay, so yeah. The body immediately begins to smolder and then burns fiercely. No natural means can douse this blaze. After 5 combat rounds, 30 seconds, the mystic arises from his ashes like the bird of legend. All his wounds are healed, but his health point score is permanently reduced by 1. That magic takes its toll in this game. The revivifying fire will also destroy any equipment that was on his body. Only exceptional magic items may survive. The spell cannot be cast more than once a week. All right, and elemental spells. Earth spells. And yeah, I'm going to go to the one that I would be most curious about, darkness spells. So let's just take a look at one. Be Night. Spell expire roll applies. This creates a zone of darkness 10 meters across, which the caster can direct over one or more of his enemies if they are grouped subtly. The zone will move on to the opponent with a speed of 20. Anyone failing to dodge will find themselves lost in an area of complete and utter inky darkness in which their combat abilities will be reduced as if they were fighting blind. A nameless dread will come over them, and they must try to resist the caster's magical attack or fall prey to one of the madnesses listed in the madness table. That's right. In paging through this, there's certain things in here, such as madness. Gaius. If no one succumbs to madness, the caster himself is attacked by a magical attack of 30. If the attack is successful, he goes mad himself. You know, I love games that have magic with consequences. Dungeon Crawl Classics, for example, is a good one where, it's a wildly swingy magic system, and you can have ridiculous outcomes that are fantastic, but there's also horrible, horrible penalties if your spells go wrong. And so, this doesn't necessarily have it as extreme as that, but, magic takes its toll. There's costs associated to it. All right. What is open? What is causing this to bling? Well, I'll figure it out later. All right, so Warlock is the last list here. So how high do Warlocks go? They go up to level 9. All right, so Song of Battle. The Song of Battle is an eerie cadence that transforms the Warlock into a ferocious berserker. His eyes begin to glow with ruby fire, and a fine tracery of red sparks covers his armor, accompanied by the stench of brimstone in the air. Intelligent creatures up to rank 2 and animals up to the 4th rank equivalent have a 30% chance of fleeing in panic if he attacks. He becomes immune to direct attack magic and adds 1 to all armor bypass rolls. He also gains a +8 to attack and a +4 defense. While the magic lasts, the Warlock cannot use any other magic. All right. Okay, Chapter 11. So we're going into the game's mastering aspect that, so there's no player's guide, there's no GM guide. It's an all-encompassing book. So let's see here. What do they have to say? At the end of this book is a sample introductory adventure. Great. When you have been game mastering Dragon Warriors for a while, you'll be devising scenarios of your own. But this one is especially written to be easy. Read through it now quite carefully and try to visualize the scenes. It is like the storyboard for a film, but not yet populated by the principal characters. Once you have looked through the scenario, get a group of players together and take them through it. All right, so this is going to provide you with a lot of, I'm not going to say generic, but, a lot of the standard advice that you probably will get in most games, but, certain things are specific to this in regards to, such as hired help, percentages of, the type of hirelings you're going to get. Bearers, what are bearers? Bearers who are too infirm or lazy to work in the field will sometimes agree to accompany the characters on an adventure and carry their lanterns and equipment. Okay, yeah. So torchbearers. They're not necessarily fighters. They're lovers. Fellow adventurers. Oh, that's cool. So so you can get a fellow adventurer to help you out. Which should be obvious in most things. It's not always, Gurk from the local farm who knows how to stab with his spear. All right. So death. Yeah. The fact he may one day be killed is something that every adventurer must learn to accept. The game would be no fun without the possibilities of dying. I agree. In the Dragon Warriors world, death can sometimes be reversed by magic. High-ranking characters may come to see it as one of the hazards of the job, in fact. For those with access to the mightier spells, death is a serious setback, but not the end of the world. All right, so carrying on. And here we go. Other rules. All right, so poisons. Yep, how to deal with poisons. Morale checks. Okay, so that's in this game. What do? When particularly hideous monsters attack, they may induce an element of fright and panic in their foe. This is simulated in Dragon Warriors by deducting the creature's attack score from the added total of the victim's rank, strength, and intelligence. Huh. All right. For example, a forest harpy with an attack of 9 attacks Balin, a first-rank warrior with strength 16 and intelligence 10, making a sum of 27. Okay? This means that Balin must roll an 18 or less on a d20 to avoid the consequences of a morale check. Oh, kind of like a fear check, so to speak. Note that once Balin is 3rd level, he won't have to bother checking his morale when faced with these creatures. Okay. So they scale. A character who fails morale check will flee the battlefield for 10 rounds before regaining his courage. Once a player has failed morale check against a particular creature, he must automatically make a morale check the next time he meets such a creature, even if it's friendly. The creature will, for this purpose, have twice its normal attack value. Thus, if Balin unluckily failed his morale check in the example above, the next time he met a harpy, it would have an effective attack of 18 while assessing his morale, and Balin would have to roll a 9 or less to avoid fleeing again. That's interesting. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, yeah. I mean, shit. Running through a forest and you see a forest harpy, whatever that is, I mean, you're just not going to immediately, be courageous and rush into battle. You're going to, shit, that's the first thing I've seen. What the hell is that? Fright attacks, okay. This is for supernatural. Okay, supernatural assaults made by certain kinds of monsters or by a few specialized spells. To resolve a fright attack, roll a d12. Subtract the victim's rank, and the result is the number that the attacking character or creature must roll equal to or less than on a 2d10 in order to scare its victim to death. Really? If the fright attack fails and the victim suffers no physical effects, though you can be sure they are extremely unnerved by the experience. Jesus. Wow, okay. This suddenly got a lot more brutal than expected. Truk, a 5th-rank barbarian, is walking along a gloomy dungeon corridor and comes face-to-face with a leering ghost. The ghost rolls a 9 for the strength of its fright. Since Truk is 5th rank, this means that he needs to roll a 4 or less on the 2d10 in order to frighten him to death. It rolls a 17, and Truk runs yelling in terror back along the corridor. Wow. Okay, gaze attacks. Okay, vision types. Many creatures have unusual vision. Oh, okay, so what do we have here? So obviously, kind of like, dark vision or whatever. So what do we have here? We have normal, panoptical, dark sight, elf sight, gloom sight. So normal, what's panoptical? Vision operates equally well in all conditions from total darkness to bright sunlight. Okay, dark sight, possessed by most undead and underworld creatures, it is the reverse of normal vision. The creatures see well in dark, but is dazzled by light. Elf sight refers to the vision that operates very well in bright light or half light. It is only marginally impaired by darkness and gloom sight. Restricted to a few creatures. The optimum illumination for this kind of vision is half-light. The creatures see slightly less well in darkness or bright light. We have things dealing with curses. Madness. Some spells, creatures or frightening aspect have, etc., have the power to move a character to insanity. Awesome. Wow. Like I said, this just got more interesting than I thought. This is not kind of like your generic fantasy game. When this happens, the game master makes 2 dice rolls. The first establishes the degree, and the second the type. So, wow. So we've got mild, intermittent, and acute, and we have anything from multiple personalities to obsessive mania. All right, and then we have other things. Notes on madness. It is very important to stress accurate role-playing when a character becomes insane. The die roll should not become the focus of attention at the expense of portraying a convincingly crazy character. Although these forms of madness are a real handicap to the affected character, the GM should use some means to integrate the madness in the campaign storyline and thus redress the balance. Right, so yeah, I mean, you can still have this in here. What it's essentially saying is you can still have this aspect in the game while still, somewhat allowing your player to have his character retain some sort of agency. All right. All right, carrying on. Diseases, and then final advice. All right, so we've got 6 bits of final advice here. Continually check the character's battle order. Make sure the battle order is consistent with where they are. When the characters encounter a monster, remember to check for surprise. You will need to roll reflexes for the monster so you know when they get to attack each combat round. When dealing with a large group of NPC adversaries and monsters, you don't need to roll a separate reflexes check for each one of them. This involves too much bookkeeping, right? A single 3d6 roll gives reflexes of every individual in the group. Easy enough. Consider how the monsters would go about attacking the player characters. Intelligent monsters should attack intelligently. Imagine that you are the monster. What would you do? Make sure you see all your players' die rolls. Make sure they see none of yours. Okay? If you don't know the answer, whether it's about the game's rules, the background, or adventure, never be afraid to make it up. Yes, improv. And number 5 is going to address that briefly. This is a different game. It was written in a different time, but the rules are carry over. Me personally, I could care less. If I'm playing with a group of adults, I trust my GM to make proper rolls. I don't get too much in the debate of fudging rolls. Once again, I don't give a shit. It's a game. We're here to have fun. And, if the occasional fudge occurs, so be it. It's the GM. And if they don't, once again, but I understand the reasoning, though, behind, at least making some rolls behind a screen if necessary to keep the, just to keep things exciting. Some things, shouldn't be known. If you're sneaking down a hallway and you think you're hidden, you really shouldn't know if the person have spotted you. You should feel like that, well, I'm safe and secure in the shadows, and therefore, unless you're watching them, you shouldn't be able to see that roll to know if hey, you know what, I hear that guy in the corner. Let's not tell them that we know that he's there, and that's going to be done by a roll, and that's going to be something that the player character wouldn't be aware of. So it's a lot easier for players to maintain the integrity of, the character's aspect, things such as sneaking around, if they don't see the die roll, in my opinion, whether things have perceived them or not. They will conduct themselves accordingly if they think that they're totally hidden, and thus when they're discovered, it makes a total surprise and they react accordingly. Whereas if they see the die roll, and they say that they're going to conduct themselves accordingly, I think it kind of ruins some of the surprise aspect. But it's my opinion, each to their own. All right, the rewards of adventuring. Let's see here. So yes, there are experience. There are 3 main ways in which a character rewarded during their adventure career. These are rank, renown, and treasure. When a character gains sufficient experience points, she increases in rank, which makes her more powerful. Renown is something of a special case in that it does not have a numerical value. Direct use on dungeon adventures, on most dungeon adventures. Still, a character of great renown is fearsome to his foes and a great assurance to his allies and significant asset in diplomacy. Treasure may include a pouch of gold as a reward for saving the life of the Lord's life, so on and so forth. Okay, so this is a game that deals with experience. Let's see here. You should normally award 5 experience points at the end of an adventure to each character who survived. You may actually decide to award as many as 10. Or as few as 1 if they were never in any real danger. 5 points, however, is the average. So how do you increase in rank? All characters are first ranked at the start of their adventure, and there we are. So we have 30 points, 60 points, 90 points, and so on. And then likewise what they get. And then renown, so the different ranks of renown and how they affect the game. And treasure, so providing treasure and equipment. Treasure hoards, spending the spoils. It's shopping spree. Let's go shopping. Trading magic, armor types, food and lodging, property and land. Yes. Okay. So we go into some other aspects to make the game a little bit more immersive and interesting in the fantasy setting. Items weird and wondrous. So enchanted weapons, scrolls, potions and magical compounds, amulets and talismans. And I'm sure these all have their own bit of personality, but these are standard things in most fantasy RPGs. Rings of power, artifacts, magical items that are extremely powerful and kind of stand on their own. They're usually one of a kind and independent. All right, and then how to create these relics. All right. So we got the Lands of Legend. All right. So yeah, once again, this is something that, if you're interested in this game, you can go into the details of this. We'll just kind of do a quick flip through it. So, just this part. The world of Dragon Warriors has a name, Legend. It's a place of warring nobles and mysterious wizards, a place for adventures. But there is a real life behind the adventuring scenes. The country of Elsland is described here in more detail than the rest of the world, and will be the focus of many of the published adventures for our game, but you should not feel contained by that. Fair enough. Yes, point on a map and say, we'll go here, and if it doesn't have a lot of detail, flesh it out. That's how we used to do it back in the day. All right, so we've got details of that along with other areas. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of immersion here in regards to the world. So yeah, this would be something where I would definitely want to check out the lay of the land of Legend before I would probably place this game into another setting of my own. All right, so there we go. So there's a good amount of information that should be enough to give you a lot of adventure seeds and give you an idea of the different lands and how they operate. The lore of Legend. One way to understand a place is to look at its folklore and myth. Legend is a world rich in magic, and many of its myths are more than half true. Here, folklore does more than reflect the world and the people. It is the very essence of Legend. The following miscellany of characters, underworlds, and magic items should give the game master and its players some flavor of life in the strange world. So, as mentioned many times as I've been going through this is definitely a wonderful, self-contained book. You kind of have everything you need in here. Even though there's a lot of supporting materials for this out here, there's quite a bit in here in a single book. You don't need to buy 3, which I forget what this one costs printed, but I think it was maybe $30 or so. I could be wrong. I'll have a link to drive through in the description. But there is enough here to just have fun for a long, long time. Right. So quite a bit. Yep. And then living in the lands of legend. So this chapter gives more information about the cultures, languages, and traditions of the lands of legend. So even further immersion into this world with quite a few details on how to conduct yourself, depending on the variety of lands in here. We've got aspects regarding the languages, literacy, learning a script, the calendar within the game, crimes and punishment, the laws of the land, things that that can't kind of, once again, tend to get hand-waved in most high fantasy adventures because, it's just, let's just go murder hobo it up and, we are heroes. We'll deal with the collateral, someone else will deal with the collateral damage. Wow, geez. There's quite a bit of information here dealing with what do witnesses do, on-the-spot finds, reasoning with judges. Things that you don't think about within the game, but they can be interesting segues during your adventure. Your characters get arrested for burning down something they shouldn't have or accidentally breaking something they shouldn't have, and this could have a nice little sidebar for some interesting role-playing. War games, tournaments, and joust. Oh, wow, okay. Who attends these events? Ransom, jousting rules. There you go. Okay, and then setting your campaign. So world building checklist. So yeah, you own Dragon Warriors. Your own Dragon Warriors game may be set in the lands of legend with a strong flavor of late Dark Ages and early medieval Europe. This is a setting used for the adventure scenarios in this book, but this is only one possible background for your adventures. History and literature provides hundreds of others that you and your players might prefer. Yep, fair enough. So a little bit of help here in case you want to set it somewhere else. World building checklist. You've got inspiration. You've got culture, magic and fantasy, non-humans, genders and rule changes. Some suggestions here. You can have it take place in feudal Japan, pre-Columbian Mexico, Roman Britain, and then settings from fantasy literature, of course. And then dealing with rule. Okay, so then we have here also included is rule variants. So we have variable damages, more lethal combat. How the hell do you get more lethal in this game? What I've read so far, it looks like you can literally be scared to death. No increase in health points. Oof. Long-term injuries. Yes. Let's get this. Let's turn this into Warhammer. Shock or knockout rule. Mooks. Mooks are always fun. Mooks should be used quite often if you feel your player characters are, getting a little bored, but you want to show how awesome they are. Just throw, 50 or 60 mooks at them and just let them mow through them, let them feel special one day. More critical hits, fate points. What are fate points? So fate points allow certain characters to survive what would otherwise be certain death. Okay, so yeah. More skills, no shopping. This is more of a game style issue than anything else. Some players given half a chance will spend a good hour of each game session rolling for the availability of obscure items. All right, yeah, okay. Show me on the credit card where the shoppers hurt you. All right, so dealing with travels and hazards. So of course, yeah, this is a game of adventure and exploration, and outside travel is going to be part of it. So that's good that this is included in the game. Underworlds, long distance travel, sea travel, different weathers to deal with, storms at sea, lost at sea, the cost of sea travel. And then finally, we come to the last part of the book, Chapter 19, The Darkness Before the Dawn, an introductory scenario for 4 to 6 first-rank characters. So just going to touch on it briefly. This adventure is designed to show you how to structure and run a typical Dragon Warrior scenario. Each location where the characters may go is described in its own section, called the scene, along with any non-player characters that you meet there. At the end of each scene, you'll find a list of likely choices the players might make and directions to the appropriate scene. For example, you might see if the players take the overgrown path, turn to scene 7, the secret path. If they follow the stream, turn to scene 8, the cottage. Okay, cool. So it's kind of a hand-holding aspect, combining a bit of choose your own adventure, or solo adventuring, such as how Chaosium introduces you to a lot of their games. But looks like it's probably a little bit more detailed. All right, so they give you a lot of information on pre-game preparation, and an action chart here, illustrated, a map of the land that you're in. And let's see here. So this is 217, and it goes for about, let's see here, 236. So it's about a 20-page adventure, and that's decent. Along with at the end of it, leading on, where are some seeds where you could go, and then that's not the last one. My mistake. So I believe we conclude then with monsters. So adventurers, yes, they are the worst monsters of all. Are we the bad guys? Yeah, you are. So we've got things such as 8-men and automatons. So yeah, you're going to have a lot of the typical ones in here, but just kind of breezing through it. I see some that might be specific or names I don't recognize. But yeah, so we, dwarves, elementals, but we have something called a death's head. Then we have griffins and hags and golems, oh my, hippogriffs, and an ire goblin, otherwise known as a bugbear. Okay. Krask, lycanthropes, mummies, phoenixes, onis, orcs, pazuzus, yep, swamp folk, titans, and water leapers, wild boars, zombies, and then here we are in the back. So we have the spell index, which is nice, done in alphabetical order, not by level. Everyone remembers the name, not the level, so it'd be nice to be able to turn directly to the spell. Thank you. And other Dragon Warrior books. So as stated a bit ago, this game has been around for some time, and even though the original books can be a bit expensive, they are available online. But the current version, the most recent version, even though it's not relatively brand new, there's quite a bit of support out there that goes beyond what's on here. I can tell you that. I own more books than what's written here, but you have a more detailed bestiary, which is always great. We have Sleeping Gods, which is an anthology of short adventures. The Elven Crystals, a self-contained adventure in 4 parts. The Prince of Darkness is an adventure that will take the players to the city of Glizom, through the mountains of Brack, and the fabled lost city of Nem, the abode of the Darkness Elementalist and home of the demon Balor, Prince of Darkness. Yeah. Sign me up. And then, all right. Oh, wow. there's a bit of congratulations here at the end. And by the way of congratulation for having read this far, test yourself with a little competition. One and possibly more of the illustrations in this book is wrong. That is, it shows the opposite of something stated clearly in the text. We could have fixed it quite simply, but instead we thought it'd be more fun to see if you've been paying attention. Hey, whatever excuse works for not having to go back and do another edit. This is the best one that I've heard. No, we meant to do that. It would be fun. Go find our mistakes. It was intentional. That's funny. But yeah, if you think you spotted it, send an email to the Magnus Opus Press address on page 2, saying what page the picture is on and why it's wrong. If you're right, we'll send you a PDF of an exclusive Dragon Warriors adventure. Well, hot damn. Well, I'm going to do that. Very cool. And then finally, at the very end, we've got, a copy of the character sheet, which I'm sure there's a PDF online you can print out. But, the old days we had to photocopy this. But yeah, as stated in the first video, very simple, very easy. It's not overly complex in the character sheet. And, this kind of gives you a general idea that, the focus is more on the setting and the world and the aspects of the game itself, and not necessarily as being bogged down with a variety of different things to have to constantly roll for. Just attack, defense, evasion, stealth, perception, armor factor, magical attack, magical defense, and your abilities. So, and there you have it. Let's see here. So yeah, recommended price $39.95. I don't know if you can still get this in print on drive-thru. I'll check the link before I put it in the description, but that's Dragon Warriors. I've got to say, I've rather enjoyed taking some time to go through this book. I've been meaning to for quite a long time, other than just doing a generic page through of just like, oh, that looks cool. Without question, this would be something that I would most definitely want to get to the table and try. And the accompanying adventures sound fantastic. Any game that has a gigantic fan base is always good to know, because there's several groups out there, Facebook and Discord, that focus entirely on Dragon Warriors. So, if there's questions, that there's a lot of people out there willing to support you, to help you out, and so you can enjoy the game the best you can without, dealing with a lot of head scratching or slowing it down if you're not too sure on how certain things work. And without question, I do think that this is, for those of you who are dealing with certain people who are in 5e, and that's all they've kind of experienced, and you're looking to maybe move them on if you're, a dungeon master that's just getting a little, tired and bored with the WotC's Dungeon Dragon settings, or you're just tired of the rules, or you feel that, things are just getting a little bit long in the tooth, you want to try something new, but, you're not 100% certain that your players are ready to move on to something totally different, jumping from 5e to Delta Green or some crazy thing like that. This is a good way to change it up, keep the familiar tropes that they're used to, but, there's enough rules changes in here to make it interesting. And likewise, could be a fantastic palate cleanser that, if you decide to go back to, the greatest role-playing game in the world, you might change it up a little bit. There's interesting takes on here that can be utilized in, any role-playing game that might, make your 5e game, a little bit more less tedious, so to speak. So there you go. For those of you who have gone through both of these videos, I myself congratulate you. This is almost 2 hours of going through this, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you find this game enjoyable enough. If you haven't experienced it yourself, that you might want to go check it out, and yeah. So if you have any questions, any comments, obviously leave it in the comments line. But yeah. So this has been a pull from the shelf, where I pull something from the shelf that I feel deserves a bit of attention, pull it in the spotlight, and go through it together. For generally speaking, the first time, with both me and you, the viewer, to see what this game is about, and see if it's something that we might want to take to the table, or stick it back on the shelf and never speak of it again. This is the former. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. And Don't know when there'll be another one of these. These take quite a bit of time, but look for other things that I do. I'll be doing another unboxing shortly. I'm also doing this silly little stupid challenge that I'm trying to see if I can do of recommend an RPG a day month, where I do a little 1-minute short of an RPG that I feel is worth recommending for people to check out. And also check me out on Titterpigs, the tabletop RPG podcast with Keith from Rolling Boxcars. Hopefully, we'll be getting a new episode up soon. We've just been busy with real life. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. And let's see if I can find this button. There we are. Take care.